Hey, welcome to my channel. I'm Amber, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a wrap up of everything that I've read in the first week of September. I know I've been doing reading vlogs, but with the heat being what it is, like here in California where I'm at, it's been over 110 degrees for the past week. So my brain has just not been able to handle much of anything unless it's just reading. So like I'm just reading, and I thought I would just switch it up and do a wrap up style video. So I'm just going to talk about all the books that I've read in the past week. I've read 3 books in the past week. I just DNF'd a book today, so I'm going to count it in this wrap up. But technically it would have been for this week, but that's beside the point. So let's just talk about some. The first 3 books I've already returned to the library, so I don't have them with me. But the first one is Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Myrow, and this one is set in 1882 Victorian London. And in this book we meet Charles, who is a 16-year-old boy who grew up in the living a brutal life in Mississippi, and also he can heal himself. We also have Marlowe, who can shine blue and melts or mend skin. We also are introduced to Alice, who is a detective who, alongside her partner, is tasked in bringing these children to this institute who have these abilities that are called talents, where they will be able to have a safe haven and learn to control their powers. But as they bring Charles and Marlowe to the institute, they realize that they are being tracked by a mysterious man that seems to have smoke surrounding him all the time. This book almost ruined my reading for me, and not in a good way, because this book was just way too long. And like the first half of this book, I absolutely was enjoying. Like, I'm starting to understand what was going on with the characters, who was chasing them, all that. I was really enjoying that part. But then once you get past like the halfway point, the book starts to drag and becomes really, really slow. And by the time that we got to like the last 100 pages, I had lost complete interest in it. And I started to realize that trying to force myself to finish this book fully was going to end up causing me to not want to read anymore. So I decided just to skim through to see where it landed and count it as finished, because I was like basically done. So I give this book 3 stars because I think this author did an amazing job in really creating these characters and this world. And even like with characters that didn't really have that long of time on page, you still felt like you understood who these people were, their motivations, the personality, everything. And it was just like you had this picture in your mind of who these people were. And so like in a way, having this like book that was like this long in part was helpful. But I think that at the point where we were in that book, he could have started to get a little bit more snappier with things, because everything had been established. We could have picked up the pace a little bit. It just felt like it was too long, and not necessarily so. So anyways, I loved it in a lot of ways. Did not enjoy it towards the last half, which is kind of like a whole sad thing. So I don't see myself ever picking this book up again or picking out the next books in this trilogy, because if they're gonna be like this long and this long-winded, I don't see myself enjoying them, unless like Scribd in my library is able to pick up the audiobook version of these books at some point. Then maybe I will actually read them through that format, and that would help me to enjoy it a little bit better. Because I really wanted to listen to this, because I feel like by reading it as an audiobook, that would have helped me to enjoy the reading process. But anyways, 3 stars like that, as I said. Then I read Home by Toni Morrison. This is a book about Frank Money, who is a Korean War veteran suffering from PTSD. He has come home, living in segregated South, and is trying to make his way to his sister who is being medically abused and get her back to their hometown. Now, with this book, it definitely made me want to read more by this author, but I did not really understand this book at all. Like, obviously the story is, like, pretty, like, obvious about, like, what the story is about. It's not, like, it's super complicated in that way, but, like, I didn't understand. It kind of felt like she just laid the story out on the table and then just left it there, walked away from it, kind of just all just scattered all over, and kind of, like, without a purpose. It's like, okay, you're telling us the story, but why are you telling this? What's the purpose behind it? There's a lot of things that we could have had discussed throughout the book. The discussion of what it was like for him as a black man to have served his country and then come home to be treated the way that black folks tend to be treated in this country, especially at a time when segregation existed. Could have talked. I mean, there's how mental illness is viewed in the black community that could have been dealt and discussed with, but because this book is written mainly in like a omniscient narrative where Frank kind of interjects here and there in his own sections, it just didn't feel like we were getting anything actually dealt with. It was just like I said, just laid out there and then left behind. And this book was like really short, so like the way that it ended, I'm just like, okay, but we didn't really see him deal with anything. We didn't really see him deal with his childhood. We didn't really see him deal with his PTSD. We didn't really actually see him actually do this, and so the ending didn't really make sense to me in that way. So like I give this 3 stars. I think that it would have been nice to have seen him actually rather I would have liked to have the story told through Frank's perspective, because when we did get his perspective, you could feel the emotions. You could actually start to understand certain things. But like, so like if we had the story told and it was a little bit longer, maybe then I would have understood the point of this book. I just kind of felt like this book was pointless in some ways. But yeah, anyways, I did give it 3 stars. The last book that I finished this week was probably Ruby by Lisa. I forgot to write her name down, so I will try to write it down in the description. But anyways, this is about Ruby, who is an indigenous woman. We start the book out with her being in her 30s, and she was adopted by a white couple who chose to keep her away from her indigenous culture and heritage, and so she has this sense of something missing, like she is, this book really centers on the idea that she's lonely, she feels disconnected to her culture and to a part of her identity that her parents chose to keep her away from, and her seeking to connect to this family. Now here's the thing about that. This book is told in snapshots. Each chapter is from a different year, and we see snapshots of her life within that year. And couple of these chapters are actually chapters from her birth parents. And so like we kind of get an understanding of like what led her parents to not, like at least especially with her mom, like it showed like what happened to why she didn't keep her. We do see what happened to her father, and so like we see like what her life is like throughout the other chapters. But that's kind of like the main issue that I have with this book, is the fact that I don't mind books that go back and forth in time as long as there's a purpose and it makes sense and connects to one another, whereas this just feels disjointed and kind of messy, and the way that this book ended just felt like a non-ending. It wasn't like she just left it a little bit open. It was like, it felt like we were in the middle of the book, and I did not enjoy that. It kind of just felt like you're driving in your car and all of a sudden you have to put your brakes on real quick, and and so I'm just like, what? I don't understand the point of this. It just again, it kind of took away some of the meaning, but this book actually holds a lot of meaning for me. I'm not Indigenous, but I do know what it's like to not have a connection to your heritage, to a part of your identity, um, and especially when I was a teenager, I always felt like there was something missing. And this book really deals with that loneliness, that longing to connect, to understand a part of yourself that you don't have. And like, unlike her parents, which I feel like chose willfully chose to ignore that fact that she was Indigenous and almost kept her away from her culture and her heritage. My mom did not do that. I just don't think that she understood like what it would mean to not uh, help me to understand where that, and also she didn't really know some things, but like, so like, I'll just say there was like some things that I very much related to her, like especially when she talked about how she was with her white parents, and either like, especially this part where she was like, when she was with her white parents and they knew that they were had to be her parents, they would always ask if she was adopted, and that was something that I experienced, especially when we first moved to this place we were when I was 11 years old. And every time I was with my dad, um, they would always ask if I was adopted, and the way that that made me feel. And it's really interesting because, well, we can talk about my experience, but this is not about my experience. But like, there's a lot of things that this book brought up in my mind about my own personal experience that I can relate to her when it comes to that. But a lot of other ways, like with how she chose to live, or how she chose to live her life, could not connect. But I could understand like what led her to those actions, and that's what this book does. And I really appreciate how this author handled that. I just, again, didn't really like the jumping, the way that she handled the time jumps and going around in time like that. It just didn't make sense. Now, if you were reading this as like a short story collection, maybe it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But I was expecting this to be a cohesive, like novel. And I also didn't really feel like we got a chance to really see her connect to her birth family the way that this book, the synopsis, kind of led you to believe that it was going to happen. Um, Although I will not put that on the author or the book itself because that's marketing. But like, I wanted to see what her experience was in when she first meets this family, and you kind of get that. But it's like I was wanting to see the process of her finding this family. But although we do get to see it, I don't know how to explain it because like we do see it, but we don't see it at the same time. It's like really weird. Because I was thinking that that was what was gonna tie each of the chapters together, was her seeking out this fertility, which we don't really see. Like, there's some chapters here and there where we see it, but it's not something that connects all the chapters together, really. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Either way, I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed the reading experience. I enjoyed the writing style, and I got a lot out of it. So, like, even if you don't relate, it gives you a chance to understand what it's like for people who have been adopted and are not from the same culture as the people, the city, nationality, culture, whatever, what have you, that the adopted parents are, and the choices that previous generations take that can have a huge impact on you as a child. There's a whole lot of things that you can learn from this book, and I would recommend it. So, like I said, 4 stars. Then today I ended up DNFing V of Where Vendetta by Alan Moore, and illustrated by David Boyd. This, I think we all know what this is about. If you watch the film V for Vendetta, you'll have a basic idea. I really did not enjoy this. I don't like the way that the typing is. I had a hard time being able to understand what I was reading. A lot of the words I got confused with because of the way that the type was done. I just don't really enjoy this story. Like, it was a little bit like hammering in the point, a little bit like on the nose. And also, it's just like it's frustrating because like I get like obviously the title says it's a vendetta, but like we had this idea, at least in the film, it was like this whole idea that he was trying to take down this fascist witch, like obviously it's bad, but like it turned into more of like he was just out for revenge, and that part was just the side, like a side effect of him doing that. Like I don't know. That's the, the way it felt to me. I have mixed feelings. I'm very confused by this whole story, and I don't really enjoy this story. It just characters are just like, I don't know. I didn't have to because I just completely lost interest in what I was reading. Especially like halfway through, like everything kind of got a little bit like messy in the way it was being told, and I didn't understand the point. Also, it's really interesting to find out that like when you get to like the end of the book one, as they call them, they call them books. That is like basically the end, like towards the end of the film. Like you're just like right, like somewhere around here, and like right here, like that. So you're not even halfway through the book, and that is like how they end. Like that's towards the end of the film because like they do it where like trying to figure out these motivation and everything, like why is he killing all these people, blah blah blah. Like that's revealed like towards the end. That's like the whole conflict mystery thing, and so like when you reveal that, that's kind of like towards the end, whereas like here that's not, and so like I kind of like lost interest. Like even though I knew, like I kind of like lost interest because like we already like knew what his purpose was. It's just basic revenge. Also, I don't really like Evie. I don't really like how he wrote Evie, but anyways. Yeah, I do have it. It is what it is. I will be starting 2 books. I don't have the first one with me, but it is a YA novel. I have it right there. I can see it almost. But it's about this teenage girl who is the editor of her school's paper, and she finds a body, and it's this teenage, this kid, this boy who was wearing his, wearing a backpack, and they thought it was a bomb, and he was imprisoned and then killed. And so I think like when he got out, someone told him, and I think she finds the body, and so she ends up like investigating in order to like write about all this, or kind of like that whole book. So that's that one. But then I will also, the book I will be starting next is Queen of the Tiles by Hannah Alkov. And this is about Najwa Bakri, whose best friend, who was called Queen Trina. She was the Trina Lau. I think, so they participated in this Scrabble competition, and Trina was like the best one, and tended to be the one that won the competition, I think, the most. And Najwa decides to go back into the competition to kind of like see if that would like help her through the healing process. But when she gets there, it just seems like everybody is just like eager to take Trina's, spot in the competition, and everything. And then one day, Trina's inactive Instagram becomes active and starts posting again. Computer messages suggesting that maybe Trina's death wasn't an accident, but actually murder. And so we're seeing how Najwa handles all of that. Very much looking forward to this. And maybe people have talked about this, but I don't remember hearing anybody on BookTube or anywhere else talk about this before, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, those are everything. That's everything that I have read this week. I would love to hear if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts on them, and I would also love to hear what you've been reading. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.